This is the Great Alaska Hunting Podcast. I'm Dalton Gray.
And I'm Moriah Humphries.
Broadcasting from our hometown of Fairbanks, Alaska. This show is brought to you by Stealthy Hunter. Thanks for listening and enjoy the show. Welcome back to the Great Alaska Hunting Podcast, everybody. I'm Dalton.
I'm Mo.
We're joined this week by one of the owners of Initial Ascent packs, Dennis Stokes. Thanks for joining us today, Dennis.
Thanks for having me on, guys. Been looking forward to this.
We're excited to finally have you on here. I apologize to all of the listeners that have been requesting episodes with you, Dennis. I've gotten several folks that they heard about the packs through us, and they want to know more about them and hear about the company. There's a lot of questions, and so hopefully this answers a lot of those for our listeners out there, and they can kind of get a backdoor look into what is Initial Ascent. And so I suppose from here on out, we'll just sit back and listen to you fill us in on the company, and I guess just start at the beginning and tell us a bit about your background and then work your way into the company and how you got where you are.
Sounds good. Well, guys, I'm originally from the state of Florida, and just kind of the opposite side of the country from where you guys are completely. And that's with most all things, that not only geographically, but with everything else as well. It's the opposite side of the nation. But I did grow up in the panhandle of Florida, and we grew up on a dirt road. It was a rural. We were outside a rural town of Chipley, Florida, right there in the panhandle. If anybody's familiar with Florida, it was about 45 minutes north of Panama City area, where all the crazy folks are. But we grew up on a small acreage. Our nearest neighbor was, about a half a mile away, and on one side, and about 2 miles away on the other side. So I kind of grew up hunting and fishing, running my four-wheeler all over the place. My parents were really good about letting me just go be a kid. And so I trapped, I hunted, I fished. I had a good little upbringing there. And so got started doing that early. When I went to college, went to grad school, and got out of grad school, and actually got hired on by a company out here in Idaho. And that was in 2000. And I moved to Idaho 2 days after my wedding. So our honeymoon was spent on the road in separate vehicles, mind you, for 4.5 days with 2 dogs and everything we owned, driving across country. That was the honeymoon. And I've since made up for that, so but it was a different world for both of us, because my wife was from Alabama, Southern girl, and I was from Florida. I couldn't wait to get out of the Southeast. I loved it, but I wanted to see other things, and so coming out west was a big dream of mine. And suffice it to say, I didn't even know where Idaho was, until I found it on a map, and I flew out here and just fell in love with everything Western. So moved out here in 2000, and I'm a dairy nutritionist by trade. So, and I actually still have my practice. I still have a few clients that I work with, because I just love doing it. I've been doing it for 25 years now. And
we're in college.
Yes, nutrition. So so I've been doing that, and I'm down to a couple days a week, of a couple full days a week doing that, and then the rest of the time is Initial Ascent. But yeah, we moved out here, and I became pretty taken back by the Western style hunting. It was nothing compared to what I was used to growing up. So we hunted lots of whitetail, we hunted hogs, trapped coons and possums and different things like that. And come out here and it's a little bit different. And so I started hunting here, and then my wife, a couple years after we moved here, my wife had twins, and actually stopped hunting for a number of years, until my kids got a little bit older, and my son was, I think he was 7, and we watched Ted Nugent of all people on TV, and he just loved Uncle Ted. And so we were watching that, and he wanted to go see Uncle Ted. Well, Ted Nugent was going to appear at the Western Hunting Summit there in Salt Lake City, and so I took my son, and that's kind of how I got back into hunting, and I was all in. Anything that I do, if you know me well enough, I go at it full steam when I put my mind to it, and so that got me back into it. I started, backpack hunting. I started just doing every bit of hunting that I can do, with the amount of time that I had, and if you fast forward a couple years past that, I met my partner, Joe Elliston. We actually went to church together for several years and didn't ever really introduce ourselves. And then our
Different sides of the choir.
he was a greeter there, and so I would run into him. I'd have to walk through the door, and he was just a really nice fella, and he reminded me of an old college buddy of mine, and my wife and we would kind of chuckle, hey, there's Day Day. That was my buddy's name because he looked just like him, and but we never struck up a conversation. It was just, hey, how you doing? Good morning, welcome, all that stuff. And then our sons, his youngest son Ty and my son Trey, ended up on the same football team, and so they. After a couple of practices, Joe came over and introduced himself, and we hit it off. And one of the things we started talking about was hunting. And so fast forward, we started hunting together. And I think our first hunt together was a bear hunt, actually. And we both, he loved backpacking. I loved to hunt, and I was getting better at backpacking, but we both owned several different types of packs, and I had a long-standing back issue from playing college football, and had just dealt with that for years. And one of the things with backpacks, especially if you're carrying any kind of load, back problems can be problematic, and I had a really hard time finding a pack that I could carry any kind of load without it just wrecking my lower back. And Joe and I, we started going as a family to the Western Hunting Summit every year, and then we probably went for, I don't know, 3 or 4 years or something like that. And the more and more we went, we were always talking gear, and on our hunts we were always talking gear, and one day we were at a men's Bible study that we did once a month, and we were talking about gear. We were talking about packs, and we were talking about this seat system that I still use today. It's called Crazy Creek, and we were talking about, somebody ought to integrate that into a backpack. And and I had some other things about backpacks personally, that I wanted to see change, because I hadn't been able to find one that fit me well enough. And Joe, he just says, well, why don't I forget how it went, but somehow I think I said, well, why don't you build that? And he was like, well, why don't we build that? And so then all of a sudden the wheels started turning, and we started working on a frame and trying to figure out what type of material we were going to use, what shape, all of that. We wanted to create something better than was offered at the time. And we worked through 3 engineering firms and Boise Tech Help, which is it's a student program there at Boise State here locally, and they take engineering students, and there's engineers that work in there, professors and whatnot. And Tech Help is where people from the outside can come in and they can help you with design, they can help you with layup, and they can help you with different products. And so Joe had a product a few years before that he utilized the services of Boise Tech Help, and really had a pretty good experience with them. And so he suggested, hey, we got to try Boise Tech Help to see if they could help us out, with trying to work our thoughts out. I mean, we, when you hear the term, white sheet, we were literally, I was taking coat hangers and bending them in different shapes. He was taking string and bending them in different shapes on pieces of cardboard, just trying to visualize, knowing what was out there, knowing that we wanted to do something different. Man, we had all kinds of crazy stuff. There was stuff that looked like wine glasses and stuff that looked like Christmas trees. So it was a fun process, but man, it was a tough process. So when we took all this stuff to Boise Tech Help, and then through them, we kind of started, we worked with another engineering firm, and tried to figure out, we knew we wanted to go with carbon fiber of some sort. That's what we settled on. We had to get the shape right and all that. And if you fast forward from there, they introduced us to our current frame engineer, who still builds our frames right here in Rexburg, Idaho, Kyle Kinghorn. And it took, I believe, 14 generations of frames before we found the one. And all those tweaks weren't major, but they had to be done. And, whether it was layering here, adding a different material. So our frame is a carbon fiber frame, but it's also a composite frame as well. It's made of some composite materials, besides carbon fiber. So that helps it function the way it does. But, in 2017, we went to the Western Hunting Expo, and we'd been working on our frame and on the prototypes for about 2.5 years at that point. And about the last day of the show, Joe disappears, and as he sometimes did, and so we're walking around, we're looking at stuff, and by the time Joe comes back, he's got a smile on his face, and he said, I just signed us up for a booth. We've got 1 year to get everything finalized and to have a pack that was ready to go. So nothing like a little deadline, a little goal to push you. And so that's what happened. 2018, and we only told, there was only a handful of people that knew that we were coming with the frame. We came with one bag, one size bag. It was like a 4,500 cubic inch bag. We called it the 4K. And we had our pannier load carrier, and we had, I think, a hip belt pouch, a rifle holder, and a bow holder. That's what we came with, and it was one color. And we came with and had a 10 by 20 booth, and there we were.
You had to put a number to the differentiation of the frames over time from prototype number one. And did you say 14 or 17 different generations?
14 before we launched. Yep.
So then between frame number one and frame 14, I mean, on like a scale of 1 to 10, would frame number one be recognizable in any way to frame number 14? Like, did you have to go through drastic redesigning of frame geometry or adding or subtracting things? Or did you pretty much on frame one have the foundation for what you would just improve materials wise and micro improvements?
That's a great question. I think we had the general shape. We had for the most part, the dimensions, but the general shape, where we had 3 attachment points on either side for webbing, and we had a point for load lifters, and we had a point in the middle of the frame that would control your shoulder strap or your shoulder harness adjustment. That's what we had. Everything else from that first prototype changed. I will tell you an interesting story, and maybe we save this, but our first pack out with prototype frame was in New Zealand, and it was a stag that Joe had killed. That was our first official pack out with this frame, and the frame actually, because we were just testing the shape and the function of the frame at the time. So the frame was made of fiberglass and wood. And dude, hey, we took a chance, and we went on a trip of a lifetime over to New Zealand. Had never been out of the country before, and we took these frames and baling twine and duct tape, other bags, other hip belts, and shoulder straps. It was a Frankenstein of a pack that we took over there, and we told ourselves, hey, we're not taking our other packs. We're gonna try this frame out, and I know it's a big risk, but we're gonna do it, and it's gonna work, and it did.
Wow. Yeah, it's just a very interesting process, at least to us anyway, because the product that we see and have in our hands now with the current Initial Ascent frame, I mean, yes, there are a lot of things about the bag designs that we really like, but there's a lot of good bags out there in the industry. But what sets the pack system apart to us is the frame geometry and how it carries. That is what takes it to that next level. And it is so different from everything else that you really see, or I should say this, and I won't get into this. It's so different from what you used to see in the industry. There are a few existing things now that I have seen come into existence since you guys launched. And I think some other smart people probably saw some of those benefits and said, hey, we can build something along that line. Obviously, there have to be some differentiations there, but I think the idea behind that carbon fiber board, that's what made it kind of stick out to us in the beginning, and the ability to carry that much weight on a pack that is that light by itself. That's what makes it stick out. But yeah, that's an
It's I tell you what, to see some of the frames that have come out even in the last couple of years. You have frames that, yeah, there's some that look very similar, but we said from the get go that just our stepping into this arena, as risky and as ballsy as that was, because it was an already crowded space. Just by stepping into the arena, we make everybody else raise the bar. And guess who wins? The customer, the hunters. And we're all hunters, so we all win. Just from that. Competition is a great thing. And there's plenty of hunters for all these companies to make good living, make a successful company. So it's pretty cool, man.
Absolutely. And then so now we got to the point now in the storyline where you guys have the company, it's kicked off, and then just expounding on that, and then maybe talk about who kind of got involved with the company, and kind of got you guys to the next level to where you are now. Because I don't know about you, but I seem to see more and more guys, well, not necessarily locally, but maybe on some YouTube type things, that I notice are now carrying an Initial Ascent pack. But obviously, we know that there's been a couple of people that have really stepped in and worked with you guys and helped get the word out. And then I would assume that is a complementary relationship to you guys being able to expand product lines and make more products and innovate in that way. So maybe touch on
For sure. Yeah. And, and I would say the first person, that really, kind of took a chance on us was Dave Baronio. He's been around the industry for years, with Outback Outdoors and then R&K Hunting Company. And he's a great friend of both Joe and mine. And we owe, I think, a lot of our success and where we are today and where we're going to him, flat out. He, it started with, he was dating a gal at the time who had one of our, and she had one of our packs, and she really, kind of gave us a chance and just tried to help us out. And it was really, really cool. But she gave that pack to Dave at a Train to Hunt national event. He was about to compete in the, I don't know, it was like a 3-mile, 100-pound ruck. And his pack that he was using, it was just not going to work because they had, these 100-pound sandbags, and it was just making that pack barrel. And you guys know what I'm talking about, where it feels like you've got a telephone pole in your back. And that was not going to work. And so she says, well, try this. And so he put on our pack, adjusted it for his height and torso length. And he ended up, I think he ended up winning that deal, and called me the next week, and we just talked for a solid hour, I think, about it. And he was blown away by it. And so he probably is the person that has hauled the single most amount of animals or number of animals off the mountain of anybody that has an Initial Ascent pack. With his out or his guiding, and he hauls at least, I think he said 35 to 40 animals off a year. And the way they do it at R&K, if they're a real close knit group. So if one guy gets something down, and everybody else can, they'll rush to them and help them. And so it's a great group, and all those guys are running our packs now. But he ran our packs for a couple years. He's still running them, and I think there were some other guys in the industry that respected Dave and were good friends of Dave's that started noticing. I ended up taking my son to Ryan and Hillary Lamper's Western Hunting Summit the first year that they had that. I did want to meet Ryan, and I had heard great things about both he and Hillary, but what I wanted mostly was to get my son in front of some of these guys that were very well respected out there. And it's different when you hear it as a kid from somebody else. And so I wanted him to experience that. And so he went with me, and man, we just had an amazing time. And I got to know Ryan a little bit, and Ryan talked to me about our packs. He's like, "Hey, I see that, your Dave Baronio's wearing your pack, and, that's really cool. You guys are, doing a great job and all that." And never in a million years would I have thought that, Ryan would be wearing our pack one day. Cause I look up to Ryan. The guy, he's just a stud, and, Western hunting, there's really nobody any better. And, so, I kind of kept in touch with Ryan, and really never asked him, if, hey, would you mind trying our pack or anything like that. He was an exo guy or a stone guy. Whoever he was with, he was always very loyal, and I appreciated that. And I figured, well, hey, I just want a relationship with the guy because I think he's a good human being, and I like surrounding myself with great human beings, like that. And so, and I did tell myself, hey, if something ever works out with the pack with it, great. That'll be a cherry on top. So kind of fast forward, next thing I know, Ryan calls me, and, he's hunting with Brian Call, for the past couple years when he'd called me, and he said, man, you got to talk to Brian. He said, I've been talking to him a little bit about you guys' packs, and he said, you got to talk to Brian. So I called Brian up. I'd never met Brian before. Of course, I'd followed him for years and seen, listened to podcasts and seen what they were doing, on their hunts and everything. And struck up a good conversation with Brian, and we ended up, sending a pack to Brian, and Ryan, I think, was in a position, where he was still, I think he was still happy with what he was using, and I totally respected that. And so fast forward from there, it ended up, where they both started using our packs, but one of the things that they wanted to see some changes with the bag. And at that time, we only had our 6K, which was about 6,700 cubic inches or so. Joe and I, as busy guys, we both had full-time gigs plus, trying to grow Initial Ascent. Man, we never even sniffed a 10-day hunt, or anything like that. There's just no way to get away for that long. And so we were thinking, well, golly, what is a bag, that big? Who's going to use that? Well, come to find out, Brian and Ryan, they were doing that stuff, them with a lot of other people, and with their bear hunts that they were going on, their spring bear hunts. Boy, boy, there were a lot of people starting to tune into that, and a lot of people wanting to do that type of hunt. And so they flat told us, they said, we really love what you got going with the frame. It feels amazing, and it can haul some weight, but the bag needs some work, and it's just not big enough. And so we worked pretty close with those two guys in trying to come up with something that was ideal for that style of hunting. We knew, and we had, before we even worked with those guys, we had our 2K, which on the design of that, we actually put the horseshoe zipper, and we wanted to test out that aspect. We loved it, and so we knew the horseshoe zipper was gonna eventually be on all of our packs. The roll top we had talked about quite a bit before we had started working with Brian and Ryan, and so that was in the plans. But they kind of spurred it along a little bit. They were like, "It's got to have a roll top," So, but I will tell you a funny story about that. So, I kind of was the lead designer on this big bag. And the way we measure cubic inches in these bags, every company has a different way of doing it. And the way we measure it is the way we've always measured it. We take, pieces of, we take these pieces of foam, and they're just, it's messy, really messy. But we put it in boxes and fill it to the top, because we know the cubic inches of that box, and then we'll take and just dump boxes one by one by one in the of this stuff until we fill it up. Now, we're not cramming the stuff down in there. You want to you can shake it a little bit just so it fills the space, but you're not cramming it down in there, because we want to be realistic. But that's how we've always done it. And then any pocket that doesn't have a zipper doesn't get counted. So if you look at our cubic inches, we do have one long pocket on there that's not counted in our cubic inches. So we're very conservative on the amount of cubic inches that we talk about. So if you compare our measurements on our different size bags to other pack manufacturers, they're going to be different. A 5K or a 5,000 cubic inch bag on our side of things may not be the same as another manufacturer. So, people have to keep that in mind. But the funny thing is I never built a bag or designed a bag this large. So I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to expand the depth of it. I'm going to expand the width of it just a little bit. And it's a unique thing with our bag that our bag, if you look at it from back to front or from side to side, there's a slight V to it. And that's done intentionally. Joe and I designed that to where we would push all that weight from the bottom up. Okay, so that's why the bag is designed that way. So I took this deal, and if we were to continue on with the V, it was going to be way out here, So designed this bag and we had a couple prototypes built and gave it to those guys. They went out and they used it. I forget what trips they used it on, but basically came back with a lot of good feedback, and there was a lot of things that needed to change. But I think the basic premise of what we designed was going to work. But we built a bag that was too big for Ryan Lampers and Brian Call. I will tell you that. They said it's just too big. So
if you have any of those spares laying around, you just send them up to me.
Oh my gosh, it's hideous. We do have it.
They were.
Gosh, it ended up being. I think it ended up being over 10. It was hideous, man. It was to the point where I got into it and I could barely see over the top. And I mean, I'm 5'7", but I mean, I could be packed out in this bag. So we went back to the drawing board on that, and we came back with what we now know as the 8K, and hit the nail on the head for those guys. So those two guys, really, it started with Dave Baronio, and I think that allowed us to talk to some of these other guys, such as a Ryan Lampers, a Brian Call, because Dave was using it. Dave is so well respected, and they know that Dave doesn't mess around. He gets it done, and it has to function properly if it's going to function for him with all those animals coming off the mountain. So started with Dave, and then those two guys have been great, and that's really how this thing has caught fire, and of course our team has done a lot of things, and just gotten better at a lot of things. From we pride ourselves on customer service. We send every single order, no matter if it is a rifle holder or one hip belt pouch, or if it's a full-blown 8K with all the accessories. Every one of them has a handwritten note that comes with it to that customer, even a T-shirt or a hat, thanking them, because you know what, if it isn't for the customer, we don't exist. And so we listen to feedback, and that's the customer's number one. Doesn't matter how good of a product you have.
Well, that's very reassuring on the consumer side to hear how you guys measure your pack volume. It seems very similar to the conversation that we've been having about sleeping bags lately, and about honest ratings for temperature of sleeping bags. If it were up to the social norms, it would seem like politicians are figuring out and labeling sleeping bag warmth numbers, because they're all off. I think there's a couple of companies that seem like they're doing it honestly, but there's a whole lot of them that, no, this thing is not what you say it is.
It's like they should have a tag on these sleeping bags, with their rate right beside their rating, that just says, "But did you die?"
Right. Yeah.
I think that's what it's not a comfort rating, I mean, I totally agree with you, man. And there's a few that are getting it right, I think, out there, but man, few and far between.
Well, there's two companies that I think are probably honestly rating their bags. Yeah.
Probably come up with the same names on that.
And yeah. They might not necessarily see eye to eye on everything, but they are the only two that I know of that seem like they're doing it honestly. But, well, possibly a third one, but they're not really a hunting brand. So, anyway. Now you know which one I'm talking about now.
I know the third one too.
Exactly. Yeah, and I mean, just for our side of this, people have asked us. I was shooting at a little archery shoot earlier today, and the guy that I was shooting with is a listener of the podcast, and he brought something up about, he was asking about partners that we have here at our show, and he was asking about Initial Ascent, and then our other two partners are Ryan Lampers and his company, Stealthy Hunter and Hammer Bullets. And he was just asking some questions, and I told him, I said, at the end of the day, for us, Mo and I both work full-time jobs, and more than anything else, I don't want to work with somebody that does not align with us on more than just a business level. I would like to be able to work with people that are honest, and I know they're being honest about what they're doing, and they actually care about it. And I think that even part of what you're doing, even still with working at your previous full-time job, if you will, that glimpse into that reality, I think, is very valuable, because people tend to look at hunting industry podcasts or hunting brand companies, whether it's apparel and clothing or tents or packs or sleeping bag or whatever the case may be, whatever you're trying to make. Or if you have a hunting podcast, people tend to just see a podcast drop every week or two, and they think that's pretty much all we do. They think that it's just that and hunting. And well, to quote the words of my father in my growing up years, there's more to life than hunting. And unfortunately, there's a lot more truth to that than we would probably all like to admit. But I think it's valuable for folks to just hear an insight into the fact that, this is still in the stages that you're still working. And there is that's just reality. And I think that makes it a lot more relatable for a lot of people. And really, we just do this out of fun because we get to chat with guys like you and get to use a lot of different things in the name of research for our own personal curiosities. And we're both gearheads.
Yeah.
Increasingly so. So quick caveat, this is kind of a odd transition time, but speaking of gearhead, why don't you tell us about your guys' podcast just really quickly, because your last 2 episodes have been about the gearhead topics. So why don't you just give just a short caveat over to your podcast really quick.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's called the Mountain Dude Podcast, and we just released episode 8. So, we're just having a good time with it. We have a friend of ours that has been a longtime Initial Ascent supporter. He's worked with us since 2019 at a lot of these shows, and he just gets after it himself. Good Christian guy, Chris Young. And so he's kind of heading up the podcast as far as the hosting duties. And Joe and I get on there, and we're having some amazing guests here lately. And Chris and I, we took a day to talk about gear, and we're going to do that a little bit more often, I think, because we both are gearheads, and that's a fun conversation. But the problem with it, we try to keep our podcast to an hour. I mean, man, come on. When you're talking gear, you can go on and on. That's why we had to separate it into 2 episodes. But yeah, it's cool because everybody's opinion is different, and everybody's opinion about gear is personal. But we don't just cover gear. We talk about just a lot of stuff. We talk about life. We talk about hunts, and the guests that we have on usually are our hunters and everything. But we've got some plans. We're gonna have all kinds of people on there and cover all kinds of topics. But the main focus of our podcast is to just talk about what we're passionate about, and hopefully reach people. And if we can put a smile on somebody's face in that hour that they're listening to that podcast, we've done our jobs, man. We want to be able to just to have offer something that is entertaining and educational for people, and maybe just pull them away from whatever crap they're in that particular day for just a little bit, and enjoy themselves.
Well, speaking from personal experience, I binged the first 5 episodes in one day at work that I was working.
Man.
Well, you know what? I was stuck in a mechanical room doing a bunch of vent tie-ins, and I was there for 4 or 5 hours that day, maybe longer, and I got through 5 episodes, 1 through 5. And it did the job of putting a smile on my face. I got a chuckle out of it. I do have to say...
Hopefully they're getting better.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, I think your production value is awesome right off the bat.
Definitely.
The audio is great. You guys are doing a great job with that. Chris does a good job of hosting. I could definitely do with hearing about 15 more episodes with Dan Whitmus, the guide on there that you had. That was a cranker of an episode. I enjoyed that one a lot. I really like hearing stories from guides like that. Yeah,
one of my favorite episodes. And he could have gone on for hours. So I got a text from Dan yesterday. He was headed into the bush there in Alaska today, and he'll be there for quite a while, I'm sure. And so hopefully when he comes out, we're going to have him back and have him on. But yeah, that story about him basically stabbing himself in the femur, and it was actually in the bone. And he pulled that knife out and had to sew himself up in the backcountry of Alaska. I mean, that gave me anxiety. Kept guiding, kept going. We're talking about bleeding. Yeah, we're talking bleeding. He sat there and sewed himself up, and he said he would sew himself, like do a couple of stitches, and then kind of pass out, and then wake up and sew a couple more. He was having to poke the innards, like the muscle and stuff. He was having to poke it in as he was sewing the stuff up. And man, and he actually ran in, I think he tells us on the podcast, but he ran into a doctor or a couple doctors that were flying in or something. He just flew out, and he told these doctors what was going on, and that he had survived this deal, sewed himself back up, and they were like, well, it didn't get infected? And I guess it was, a little green or whatever, but he lived. And I mean, but did you die? That's exactly right. But man, that just freaked me out, that whole thing, because I've never been to Alaska, and that's definitely on the bucket list. But the years that have gone by and me hunting, I mean, I had issues going out solo hunting. I had to build into it. I would go out for one night and then come back, and then 2 nights, and then 3, and then it became secondhand. But then I sit back and I think about Alaska, and I think about a bush plane dropping me off for 10 days in there, and I just think about what can happen, and I let my mind get the best of me, basically, like I'm sure some people do. But that blows me away. And then I listen to somebody like Dan talking about stabbing himself in the femur back there, and it just freaks. I'm surprised I didn't pass out listening to him. But
I can tell you right now, I definitely would have hit the SOS button on the inReach, 100%. I would have gotten out of there. Yeah, I might have even just left the knife in there. Be like, nope, I'm not doing it. It's in the bone. I'm not taking it out. Yeah, that's crazy stuff. So if you want to listen, to the Mountain Dude podcast, and the Mountain Dude is derived from the brand logo at Initial Ascent. And so if you want to listen to their podcast, you can find it on Apple Podcasts is where I listen to it on. And then is it available on Spotify and all the other normal platforms as well? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, you can find it. And probably 80, I don't know if you guys have noticed this, but 86%, I think, is where we're at this week. 86% of our podcast downloads are on one of those 2 platforms.
Yeah, it's pretty consistently the same way with us, too. I'll bet it's the same one. But, yeah. Yeah, so you guys go ahead and check that out. And then, obviously, as we ask our listeners to do, go give them a 5-star review and a positive written rating while you're doing that with our show. That's the only way that we ask you to support the Great Alaska Hunting Podcast is a 5-star review and a positive written review. if you have a question, do not ask it in the form of a written review on Apple Podcasts. Please, just email us.
I'll have to make sure we say that.
Because there are some people that are slightly technologically challenged, and they think that's a direct email. And they'll write a review and then post it, and then I don't see it.
Right.
And then I'll see it a couple months later and go, oh, someone thought this was our email address.
Spotify does have a system that's supposed to work like that.
Yeah.
If we remember to go to Spotify and check it. But
yeah, that's funny. So I guess now we get to the fun part of the podcast, Dennis. So you've done a lot of hunting. You haven't been to Alaska yet, so obviously this ranking will get skewed, hopefully, once you make it up here. But if you had to pick out one of your all-time favorite hunts and tell us that story, can you take us down that path?
Absolutely. And I'll tell you this: it's not going to be a backcountry hunt, but this is a hunt that's near and dear to my heart, and it kind of starts with this picture up here. A guy by the name of Joel Pilcher in Utah painted this. My wife commissioned him to paint this, but this is a picture of my dad's hands. My dad's no longer with us, and when he was alive, I booked a hunt for him because he wanted to hunt mule deer, and I had him come out one year to mule deer hunt with me, and I found out the hard way that when my dad came out, because my dad was a very private man, but I found out the hard way that he was suffering from COPD. And he was kind of in a bad way. I mean, I told him, I said, man, you got to get in shape before you come out here and hunt, because we're going to be hiking hills and all this. Well, we took 20 steps, and Dad had to take a break. And I said, Dad, I thought you were training. I thought you were, getting ready. Well, I did, but I got this thing going on. And so, anyway, fast forward, he didn't kill a mule deer that trip. We had to change things up a little bit because of his health, and so I actually booked a hunt with Western Lands there in Utah, and for him, and because that was the only way that I felt like I could get him a mule deer in his current state. And man, we worked with this guide for a solid week, trying to get my dad in position, because at that point, I mean, he couldn't walk 5 steps without being out of breath, and so there wasn't going to be a hustle up to this ridge so we could peek down and get this buck. And so Sean, the guide, man, he was so good with my dad, and he was a very seasoned guide, and ended up on the last day, my dad ended up killing the buck, and we actually he killed it way up on this hillside. It was about, 300-yard shot, and my dad, as he always had done, he was a crack shot, and he killed the buck, just dropped him right there. We actually Sean and I had to go up there, get the buck, bring it down. My dad, couldn't make it up the hill, and so we could take pictures and whatnot. So, a couple years later, my dad passed away, and he passed away in November, and I decided that February that I was going to book a hunt back to Western Lands, and to commemorate, him and our last hunt that we got to do together. And So I got Sean was no longer guiding there because I was ultimately I wanted to get Sean, but I got a good guy, Tanner, that knew why I was there, and he was actually there when my dad was had come with me on his hunt a couple years before that, so he remembered my dad and Sean, and he was really good to take me to the place where my dad killed his buck, and I got to kind of sit around a little bit and reminisce and all of that, and it was out of the same lodge and everything, so it wasn't a a tough backcountry hunt or anything, but what I didn't know was my good friend Ryan, he had bought a moose hunt for his wife that same week, and they were a guide short, and the guy that had guided my dad on his hunt, Sean, was called in to guide them on their moose hunt, and this is on the same ranch and everything. It's a massive, massive ranch, but so Sean was actually there that week, so I got to visit with Sean a little bit and kind of. I told him what I was doing and everything, and so we got to reminisce about my dad and how funny he was about how cold he got and couldn't put on enough clothes and all this stuff. And that week, it was a really special week to say the least. And so we glassed bucks, and we were trying to find a good buck. I was on a management hunt, so we were trying to find a management buck. The trophy buck was off the table, but I ended up missing a buck about midweek, and it was about I think it was about Wednesday or so, and I was there till Friday. I missed a buck, and it didn't happen. And that evening, Stephanie, my buddy's wife, killed her moose. And so we went and helped them and helped Sean. And so that next day, Sean says, well, hey, why don't we'll go, to one area of the ranch, and we'll see if we can't, glass you up a buck. And, you guys can go where you guys were going to hunt, and then we'll just keep in touch on the radio. Well, Sean ended up glassing up this buck during this morning. We were about 3 miles away from him, and so we jumped in the rig and went over there, and we tried to get in position, but these bucks there were 7 bucks, and there's some significance to that number. And I'm a Christian, and I wear my faith on my sleeve, and I believe God had his hand all on this week. And so Sean, the guy that guided my dad, found this group of bucks, and this group of bucks were sitting there glassing, and they're greater than 1,000 yards away, and we're just sitting to figure out where they're going to go. And so they fed over this ridge, went to the other side. So Tanner and I went around and ended up, we kind of knew where they were going to bed for the day. And so we went around and got set up and everything to where we thought they possibly were. And we're glassing, and it's thick stuff, all kinds of bushes and everything. And so we're starting to glass with the spotter and everything. And we're starting to pick up a tine here and an ear here and a little patch of hair, and they're about 375 or something like that. But we just start picking out one at a time, and the weather this day, guys, wind was blowing like crazy. I mean, it was anywhere from 20 to 40 miles an hour, just constantly. And we had rain coming in and out, snow coming in and out, and we just we sat there from probably. I think we sat there from the time we started picking out antlers, from about 9 in the morning until that evening when it all took place. But what they ended up doing is, one by one, those bucks got up and started feeding, and how these mule deer bucks will do. They'll get up. They'll have an early bed, and then they'll get into their secondary bed, and then they'll bed for kind of the rest of the afternoon until they get up again to move to their feeding area. And so we start watching them one by one get up, and the very last buck was the buck that Sean had glassed up and said, "That's your buck." And Tanner was like, "Yep, there he is." And so ended up that buck just kind of stayed. I mean, he stayed kind of secluded. All we could see was his head. And that buck just would not give us a shot. Every other buck gave us a shot, but they weren't what we were looking for. So they ended up bedding down, and this buck bedded down to where we could just see his antlers and sometimes his head. And so they sat there for another 2 hours in their bed. So we're trying to, I'm at the same time going through all these emotions and whatnot. And fast forward to, golly, it was probably 5:30 or something, and we started seeing bucks get up just one by one. And what they were going to do is they were going to get up. They were in their secondary beds, but they were going to get up and they were going to feed back over the ridge where we first spotted them that morning. And but there wasn't a good way to get close to them if we didn't get them before they fed over. And so one by one, these bucks got up, and that buck just stayed there and stayed there and stayed there. And ended up, again, he was out of 7 bucks. He was the 7th buck to get up. And this wind was blowing. It was a crosswind. And we were at 3, I think it was, he ended up being right at 400 yards. And the wind was just blowing. And man, I had been doing a lot of praying. I do that, especially on hunts, and just going through all the emotions of the moment, of the week, and thinking about my dad, and just really wanting this to happen. Well, the wind has picked up, the snow's blowing sideways, and I don't feel real comfortable. That when this buck gets up, that I'm going to be able to execute this shot and drop him, there. And so he finally gets up, and and Tanner, he's kind of talking to me in my ear, and he's like, "Man, you're gonna have to hold." The wind was gusting to up to 45, 50, and he's like, "Man, you're gonna have to hold off of this deer." And so I'm prepared to do that. I'm mentally prepared to do that. The buck gets up and he starts to feed out, and I can still only see just his back and his head and his antlers. and there's an opening that I can see, and Tanner's like, he's going to take a couple more steps in that opening, but you're going to have to be ready. And I'm still kind of praying, just that the Lord, if it's His will to make this happen. And that buck takes those few steps, just like Tanner said, and that buck stops. And I'm getting ready, and I'm trying to think that the wind was blowing right to left, and so I'm aiming back there. I mean, almost at his butt. I'm not off the deer, but I'm almost at his butt. As hard as this wind's blowing. And just before I'm about to squeeze that trigger, I kid you not, the wind dies. It stops. It's done. And Tanner's like right on him. And so I just squeeze that trigger off, and I drop that buck. And as soon as that buck dropped, that wind picked back up and the snow was going. And, and I just, sat there, and I'm like, thank you. And man, I get over to that buck, and I just sobbed. I just cried like I'm about to do now. But it was a very special thing. And to have all that stuff happen and have Sean, who hadn't been there since that season, just happened to come back for a week. And he was the one that happened to find that buck. Cool thing. It was definitely a God thing. And so I know my dad was smiling down on me. So there it is, boys. But that buck's up on my wall now. And, it's a pretty special thing. So
great story. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of hard to follow up with anything else about that.
I was going to say, if folks, like that and they want to read all the details about my dad's hunt, on our blog there on Initial Ascent, we have a spot for hunting stories. And I wrote an article on that, so they can kind of read all the details. I probably left something out. It's been several years since then, but yeah. So thanks for letting me go through that, guys. I appreciate it.
That's very, very, yeah. That's
Thank
awesome.
you for telling it.
Yeah, I appreciate you telling us that. That's part of what makes hunting special, is the bond and the ties that you have, whether it's with close friends or with family members, that stick with you for a lifetime. And it's awesome because you don't have to do what everybody else likes to do to enjoy it. There's plenty of people that look at what Mo and I do every spring, and we bust our humps bear baiting. And there are people even that live in this town that don't understand why we like bear baiting so much. But to us, bear baiting is just awesome. Other people have zero interest in it, but it's what we like to do in the spring. But some other people, they like to only hunt during moose season, or some guys are whitetail hunters, or some guys live to turkey hunt. And that's what is so nice about it, that there is so much variety within what hunting is. And even if it's just small game hunting, some people just live to shoot small game. And if that's what does it for you, at the end of the day, it comes down to a quality time and experience out in the woods. That's the foundation of any good hunt. Is you're not in town, you're not at work, you're not dealing with the pace of a normal everyday life. When you're out there, doesn't matter if you're grouse hunting or if you're sheep hunting, you're unplugged. You're not having to think about what else is going on back there, because I'm focused on what's here and now and with whoever you're with. And that certainly doesn't take anything away from that hunt with your dad. I think that was think that's a very special story. I'm glad you were able to share that with us. I appreciate it.
No, I appreciate the opportunity. Yeah, you're exactly right. I mean, I think about. I was thinking about this the other day. Like my phone, okay, it's an iPhone 13, and that's one version, past the cutoff of where you can do satellite, communications, texting. And so I know I was thinking, golly, do I want to go get that new, iPhone 16, or, even better yet, do I want to go, get the Starlink, the little mini Starlink? And I'm like, you know what? No, I don't. I don't want to do that. I do. I want to keep up with my family when and let them know that I'm okay and all that. But dang, I don't want to bring technology any more than I have to into the woods. It just, for me, that is the time when I get away. I can reflect. I can pray. I can think without all the distractions. Man, I don't need that stuff coming with me.
Yep. Well, and just before I forget to mention this too, on your podcast, the Mountain Dude podcast, you guys start off every episode with a prayer. And I greatly appreciate the testimony that is, especially in the hunting industry. There is certainly a lot of other content out there that is quite the opposite of a show that is centered around a Christian example. And I know none of us are perfect, and I can do better in a lot of ways, as I'm sure that we all can. But I just also wanted to say thank you for being outspoken about that and having that example. I appreciate you guys doing that.
Appreciate it, man. Thanks for bringing that up. It's a true honor. It really is. And when we built this business, we have our foundation as men, and we have our foundation as husbands and fathers, and our foundation is found, in Jesus Christ. And it's no different than our backpack has a foundation of the Integris frame. But yeah, our lives, our business, our everything revolves around our foundation, or starts with our foundation. And so, to be able to bring that foundation into everything that we do, not only personally but business wise, it's very important to us. And I hope other people, can see that and maybe glean some things, from that. So if that's the case, that's so cool.
Well, yeah, it's definitely a challenge to us to maintain that standard. Mo and I both grew up in church, and we still attend the same church together. That's how we met. Yeah, when my folks moved back to the States permanently when I was a teenager, my dad grew up in the church that we still go to, and so when we came back to Fairbanks permanently, as I was in my teen years, Mo and I hit it off right away and jumped in his old '97 Chevy and went bear baiting.
Yep.
Right off the bat. And we had bow hunting in common early on in our childhood, and so we had a lot of common ground. And then I went and married his sister, and so we hated each other for a while, but
a couple years there, yeah.
Kind of grew out of that. But that Christian background is something that Mo and I have talked a lot about. That if God opens the door and we can continue to do things like this and have the podcast and integrate hunting and this kind of thing into our lives, and God allows it, then we want to do it. But if the door closes, then that'll be God's choice. But we want to do our best to be an example, and not go the route that that I think probably exists more often than not, especially in the media entertainment side of this industry. And that's easy to do. And I listen to some podcasts where that's not the case. But hopefully there are enough people out there that are Christians that can appreciate a podcast like yours, where you are outspoken enough about it, and that can help encourage them to be a bit more outspoken about their own faith as well.
Yeah, cool. Any way God wants to use us, for His purposes, that's what we're all about. And so no, it's really cool. I appreciate you bringing that up.
Well, on the Mountain Dew podcast, you guys wrap up each episode with a segment called Rapid Fire Questions. So I told Mo, I had this thought this morning. We should do some rapid fire questions with Dennis before we end the show. So I've got a few written down, and we'll do it the same way just for our listeners, we'll do it the same way that they do it on their show. You don't have to give any reasons or explanations. Just first thing that comes to your head, one answer or the other. Fixed or mechanical broadheads?
It's just recent, though.
Okay, well, we'll circle the wagons back around to that one here in a second. Freestanding tent or teepee? Say that one more time.
Uh-oh. We lose your audio?
Yep, hold on here. I think we just had a blip in the audio. Did your earbuds cut out?
Oh, there you go.
There you are. Okay. Freestanding or teepee? Okay. Leather or synthetic boots? Gas or diesel pickup? You said that you grew up playing football, so Chiefs or Patriots? Oh, thank you for saying that. I can't stand the Chiefs, and I'm not even a football fan.
Yeah,
I mean, just for maybe 2 minutes, let's go back to fixed or mechanical, because I have been on a serious archery kick lately. I just picked up a new bow this last week. I've been shooting it a lot. I've got a big bow hunt planned for this fall, and so obviously consuming a lot of material about bow hunting, and I did not realize that the mechanical broadhead market was so saturated until probably the last month or so. So tell me, why mechanical over fixed for you?
Okay, so again, this is just a recent thing for me. I don't have much experience with the mechanical. Every animal except for the last one that I've killed with my bow has been with a fixed broadhead, and I've had great success with it. The last fixed that I've used probably on the last 4 or 5 animals has been an Annihilator broadhead, and had no problems. Although I take that back, I did lose a bull this last September, but that's another story. The mechanical, I hate tuning broadheads. Hate it. And so that's why I've got some severs, and I'm gonna give that a go this year. So that's the reason.
I have 1.75s.
1.5.
Okay. Interesting. Have you shot them much in testing?
I've shot them a little bit. I won't say that I'm done with my testing yet.
Okay. Well, I have no...
So far, so good.
I've got a brown bear hunt coming up that I'm going to take my bow on, Lord willing, in October, a personal hunt. And I'm not going to shoot mechanicals for that hunt. But I do think that I'm going to try mechanical out at the bear bait on maybe a black bear next spring if I get the shot. Because black bears are easy to shoot through. You can pick any sharp broadhead, and it's just more about where you put the stupid arrow than what you're actually shooting, as long as the mechanical functions right. And so that's kind of the holdup that, but I don't know. We'll see. I'm definitely intrigued by it. It looks like there's a lot of good options out there, a lot of new stuff. But
yeah, I'm pretty. I've got like I said, I've got the Sever, and I'm pretty excited about the possibilities there. So, but
just deer.
Gonna elk hunt with it. Yep.
What's your arrow weight? Just out of curiosity.
I am. Let's see. I recently redid that, and I am at 458. But that's 27-inch draw at 75 pounds.
Very nice. Well, that's probably as good a note as any to just end this on.
Yeah.
Do you have anything you want to add to it, Mo?
I don't think so. Love the pack.
Yeah.
Dalton's the interviewer on the show. So
Mo's about to embark on a long and arduous sheep hunt that our listeners will hear. He's going to do a pack dump. He's going to be one of those pack dump influencers now. I'm
going to take a note from Brian on one of the last pack dumps he did. He put his list on the side of the screen, and not because it's his video or anything specific, but because that list is there, I keep going back to it.
Yeah.
To go through it and say, what am I missing? What can I change?
Yeah.
And so I think I'm going to do the same thing.
Yeah. That's a great way to do it. Brady Miller over at Go Hunt, when he does his gear list, I really like the way they do theirs. And I've actually copied that a couple of times where I'll do just sleeping gear. I'll do, cookware. I'll do, my bow. I'll just go through clothing, and you do it all in different sections. I really like doing that versus the whole yard sale thing.
Yeah. So Mo will be putting his 8K to hard and arduous use here very shortly.
14 days.
Can't wait. I can't wait to see that, man.
So he's going back to the middle of nowhere. Out to Jed Clampett's property, way out in the back country. So, all right. Well, Dennis, it's been a pleasure. Thank you very much for coming on the show, and thanks for working with us up to this point.
You guys, I certainly enjoyed it. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. And folks, just a reminder, if you do enjoy the Great Alaska Hunting Podcast, we do ask the only way that you would support our show and help us to continue to grow is to, number one, send it to a friend, and then leave us a 5-star rating and a positive written review on whichever platform you're listening to us on, including the YouTube videos, if you can like that video and make sure you're subscribed to the channel. We're going to try to film some more video-oriented content this fall. I'm sure Mo will take some snippets from his sheep hunt, and if all goes well and it's not raining sideways and blowing 60 miles an hour the whole time, then I'll try to film some of my brown bear hunt in October. So we'll see how that all pans out. But we appreciate you all for listening, and we will see you in the next episode.